Welcome back, Left Reckoners. David Griscom here, and I'm very thrilled to be joined by a return guest on Left Reckoning, who is a reporter and writer at The Guardian, Dharna Noor. How are you doing, friend?
I'm good. It's nice to be back here. Wow, returning.
I know. I'm really happy to have you back. We always have such a good time having you on the program. And, you know, I will just say every time we have you on, it's always really exciting to talk about your work because you're covering so much really exciting stuff. And this story here is a little close to home for me, but you wrote a very, very great profile in The Guardian about Tim Dunn, who is quite the character. I mean, why don't you introduce this figure to our audience who might not be as familiar with him?
Yeah, I will say that, like, I was not super familiar with him until a couple of years ago when I started hearing more about him in, like, sort of Texas oil circles. And I feel like generally, unless you pay a lot of attention to, like, oil billionaires generally, or you're in Texas, you probably don't know this guy's name yet. But he, you know, he's again, like an oil billionaire. He's from West Texas, from the sort of like the heart of the Permian Basin. And he's spent millions and millions of dollars pushing the Texas GOP to the far right over the past decade and a half. And like really playing in that field. Like his realm has not been like, you know, protecting the GOP from like, you know, Democratic candidates or anything like that. He's fully like, you know, he's running Republicans against Republicans in order to push them farther right. He's a Christian nationalist. He is a pastor, like an active pastor at a church that he owns. He also owns a compound with a private school, like a private Bible school that he runs across the street. Super kind of like protectionist, bizarre character, who also has like his kind of fingers in many things and does not talk to media. So I didn't get to talk to him.
No, I mean, for how influential he is and how much I think I shouldn't say people know him. I think more like people maybe who write about Texas know him. Like it's very clear he's playing a major role in this state. I mean, nationally too, as we'll get into in a second.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is sort of surprising how quiet he can be. I mean, I want to get into him and his like ideology, but before we jump into that, like, what is the kind of larger stakes for people maybe outside of Texas? I mean, a lot of people, might not be, might accept Texas as a kind of conservative Republican-run state. Why is somebody like Tim Dunn alarming for somebody who might not be too invested in the state?
Yeah, I mean, for a really long time, he's primarily focused on Texas, but more recently, he's gotten super involved in national politics. And this has been like a pretty rapid shift. In 2016, he supported Ted Cruz's run and gave him like a little bit of money for his presidential campaign. In 2020, he gave Trump, you know, $500,000, which is not, obviously that is more money than like I will ever have, but for him, it's not huge. But now he's like cemented himself as a top 10 Trump donor. He's the 8th largest contributor to Trump's campaign. And he made a $5 million donation last year. He also is now like, you know, kind of in with all of these far right think tanks that are providing Trump with like policy proposals and stuff like this. He works with a bunch of like Trump aligned people. You know, we can talk about Brad Parscale, for instance, the Texas Public Policy Foundation, who we've talked about before on here. So he's, you know, he's not only a Trump donor, but he's like deep in sort of Trump world right now, too.
You know, and I have to say it's kind of interesting, and I might be a little bit outside the scope of this piece here. But it's interesting to see, I think, some of these more like Christian fundamentalist types trying to influence Trump, because it seems like there's a lot of money maybe trying to entice him in a different direction, not, you know, in a kind of secular position, let's say. But
yeah.
I just wonder how much influence that kind of like fire and brimstone kind of Christian nationalist politics, at least the old style version of it, it has in Trump world right now. No,
I mean, I totally agree. I've kind of always found this really fascinating and frankly pretty confusing. Because, like, you know, Trump is taking massive amounts of funding from this guy, but then is also going on the debate stage and being like, you know, now that Roe versus Wade is overturned, I'm not going to, like, you know, be for a federal abortion ban and things like this. I want to leave those decisions up to the states. So it doesn't seem like, at least yet, it doesn't seem like there's like a sort of direct appeal in a lot of ways to the sort of more Christian nationalist parts of the party. Although since he got shot, it does seem like he's talking about God a little more, and I wonder if that's like a strategy thing or just like a when you get shot, you start thinking a little bit more about God.
Yeah, I mean, and as we all saw, the American flag twisted itself up into the symbol of an angel. So, you know, there might be some signs here of the divine. But I mean, all right, well, let's you know, yeah. So I mean, on the national level, it's going to be interesting to see how he's able to play. But I mean, I think it's some people might not have a sense of the scope of the influence of this guy. I mean, look, Texas, we sometimes like to present it this way. A lot of people think of it this way as like this super tiny rural state. It is a major American state. You know, over 30 million people live here. It's a very significant place for a lot of reasons. Could you talk about how Dunn plays in politics? You know, if I'm a Republican politician, how am I interacting with somebody like Dunn?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on if he's for you or against you, really. He plays in basically every political arena.
And if you'd like to hear the second half of that conversation, jump on over to patreon.com/leftreckoning to hear me and Dharna talk a little bit more about Tim Dunn, the Texas oil billionaire, Christian nationalist, and his strange plans for Texas and the rest of the country.